parallel lines and transversals. So in the last set of notes, we just talked about lines and transversals and what the types of angles were called. And we just focused on the corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, and same side interior angles. And now we're going to get even more specific, and we're going to talk about what happens when lines are parallel. So when lines are parallel, and notice over here, we've got this arrow right here. It's just a tad blurry, but when this arrow's here, that means that the lines are parallel. So when the lines are parallel, this means that we have angles. Certain angles are going to be congruent, okay? So by definition, if you have corresponding angles, so our first type of angles up here in our chart, so if two parallel lines are cut by transversal, then the pairs of corresponding angles are congruent, meaning that they are going to be the same. Okay, so for example, angles 2 and 6 are corresponding, 4 and 8 are corresponding, 1 and 5 are corresponding, and 3 and 7 are corresponding, which means those angles are all congruent to each other. All right, so alternate interior angles. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of alternate interior angles are congruent. And you can kind of tell by looking at them that they are going to be congruent because they're either both acute, meaning they're less than 90, or they're both going to be obtuse. So alternate interior angles, so remember they're inside the two lines. So they're inside the two red lines, and they're on alternate sides of the transversal. So 4 and 5 would be alternate interior angles, and 3 and 6 would be alternate interior angles. All right, alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior angles are going to be congruent. Okay, so these are also going to be congruent. So these are going to be outside of the lines that I just, drew in red. So, and they're going to be on different sides of the transversal. So 2 and 7 and 1 and 8 would be congruent. Okay, and then same side interior angles. Now notice these angles don't look the same. So like 4 is an obtuse angle, 6 is an acute angle. So these are not going to be congruent. So these angles are going to be supplementary, which means they are going to add up to be 180. Okay, so these are going to equal 180 degrees. So 4 and 6 and 3 and 5. Okay, so in example 1, let's make this a little bit bigger so we can write on here. Now, so if you're given the measure of one angle, that means you can find the measure of every other angle in this picture here. Okay, so if we know that this is 120 degrees, so you can use vertical angles that we've talked about. You can use the fact that, this is on a straight line. You can subtract from 180 and get angle 2. There's lots of different ways you can go about finding that second angle because basically there are only 2 angle measures in this entire picture, okay? So the easiest one to find first is angle 4. I know angle 4 is going to be 120 degrees. And let's go ahead and find every angle measure that's 120 degrees. So if the blue angle is 120 degrees, I know angle 5 is 120 degrees because those are corresponding angles. And I know this is going to be 120 degrees because angle 4 and angle 8 are corresponding angles. And of course, angle 5 and angle 8 are vertical angles. So I have found all my angles that are 120 degrees. So I can now find the rest of my angles because all I need to do is 180 minus 120 and get 60 degrees. Because like I said, this is on a straight line here. So 180 minus 120 is 60 degrees. So every other angle is going to be 60 degrees. Okay. So now let's find the value of x and the numbered angles. So kind of the same concept here. So remember, this forms an x right here. So 115 and angle 4 are vertical angles, which means angle 4 is going to be 115 degrees. Okay? Now, angle 4, so angle 4 and this angle here, these angles are same side interior angles, which means they add up to be 180 degrees. They're supplementary angles. We've just learned that. So I know that 115 plus x plus 5 equals 180 degrees. So now I can just solve for x. So 115 plus 5 equals 120 plus x equals 180. If I subtract 120 from 180, x is going to be 60 degrees. So x is 60. And I have found my angles. Of course, it wanted me to find angle 4, so I need to box that as well. Okay, let's do B. It wanted me to find angle 1. So angle 1, so since this is on a straight line here, I know that straight lines add up to be 180. So to get angle 1, I would do 180 minus 136. So that's going to be 44 degrees. Okay. All right. So now, if I know angle 1 is 44 degrees, I know this is 44 degrees. This angle corresponds to this angle. So these two angles here are corresponding angles. Okay? And if they're corresponding, I know that they are congruent. So I can do 44 equals 7x plus 9. And so now I can solve for x. I'm going to subtract 9. So 44 minus 9 is going to be 35. So 35 equals 7x. I'll divide by 7. And so x is going to equal 5. Okay. So now, example 3. When sunlight enters a drop of rain, different colors of light leave the drop at different angles. This process is what makes a rainbow. For violet light, the measure of angle 2 equals 40 degrees. Okay, so I know that that right there is going to be 40 degrees. Let's do a different color. Let's do it in blue to show up a little better. What is the measure of angle 1? Okay, so here are my parallel lines. So there's, you see that little arrow right there. Okay, so the yellow lines are parallel lines. The red line is the transversal. So it wants to know the measure of angle 1. So these angles right here, I know they are congruent. I know the measure of angle 1. Measure of angle 1 is going to be 40 degrees. Okay, and the reason that I know that they're both 40 degrees is because these are alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are congruent. Those are alternate interior angles. All right, in example 4, which one doesn't belong? Okay, so the measure of angle 1 and angle 3. Okay, so I know those are congruent. So let's just make some notes here. I know that these are corresponding angles. I know that those, so I know those are congruent. Angle 2 and 4, so I know that these are alternate interior angles, and I know those are congruent. Angle 2 and 3, let's see, these are same side interior angles, and I know these are supplementary. And angle 1 and 5, those are alternate exterior angles, and I know those are congruent. So all three of these are congruent except for this one. So I would say that this one doesn't belong